Let's call the meeting to order. The first thing we need to do tonight is approve the minutes of the January 28th meeting. Any comments, corrections? Gary?
I just thought they're excellent.
Okay.
Lois knows the next meeting won't be the same.
No, that's 2 meetings in a row I've been in that you said that.
Well, I have a correction for the Rules Committee tonight. So.
All right.
Okay.
Just I want to make sure you're still on the job.
It's personal. You'll understand why.
Okay. No, but
I thought they were nice people.
Yeah.
I really did.
But all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, well, let's dive right into our special meeting while we're here. We're going to review issues raised at the RTM public hearing held February 6, 2019 concerning the proposed ordinance for the management of plastic and paper checkout bags in Darien. But let's just call it the bag ordinance. That's easier. So, I think, there was a good turnout. We had about half of our group was at that meeting. And, I thought there were some really good comments. Anyone want to just throw some things out there that they remember, want to talk about? Lois, anybody?
I thought there were a lot of different viewpoints. I thought there was a lot of credibility. I mean, I think some of the people that were not in favor of the plastic ban were not because they were opposed to the plastic ban, but they thought that there were bigger issues and that we weren't addressing the bigger issues. That's sort of a positive way of what I got from hearing some of the opposition.
No, I think that's good. I to kind of go on what you're saying. I think Joe Warren spoke very passionately that he's not opposed to he just thinks that it's not enough, and he felt there should be no reason why plastic bags, the flimsy ones should be able to be recycled and they should be taken up. You kept talking about Bridgeport, but he meant the recycling plant up there.
So I have a couple of things. One, and I've tried, I just haven't been able to get it done. But if anyone knows the difference between what Stanford's approved, Norwalk's approved, that kind of comparison, and how does that compare to what we're talking about? That was one. And secondly, second thing, I'd like to have somebody relook into the dry cleaning plastic bags that are on people's doors.
Those are miserable.
Well, they're one, big, two, miserable, three, I don't know that there's another reuse. Like, I don't have any problems with the newspaper bags because I know everybody a lot of people reuse them for other things. And the reason I bring it up is that in the presentation last Wednesday, somebody stood there and says there are better ways to do that. There are things, permanent ones you could use, or there's paper or other kinds of options, that there is another option for that, and therefore I just think maybe we could ask them. So I put that on the table.
I know the lady that brought that up, and she didn't name where she goes, which dry cleaner it was, but she said that you can just request a bag as opposed to the plastic, and I wasn't aware of that.
I brought that up at the last meeting, and because I do that at it's Fabric Care.
Okay.
I think others probably do it too, but again, you have to ask for it.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So, but I thought what we do is the first thing I wanted to do, I mean, this is all good what we're talking about, but I also want to get right to the point is, do we want to move forward and with a, discussing bag ordinance, or do we just want to, because I think we should get that out of the way. Are we in favor of moving forward with this? And let's just, are we in favor?
Yes,
absolutely.
Okay, Brian? No? Okay.
I think that the comments at the meeting.
Pardon me?
I think the comments at the meeting were, and the majority were positive. There, I think I counted, and I don't know if this is accurate, about 6 people who spoke. There were about 30 who had maybe something a little negative, like you said. Maybe it was just it didn't go far enough, but otherwise, the majority was very positive.
So Brian, you didn't say you. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you don't think we should move forward with the bag ordinance?
No.
Okay.
You want to say why?
No.
Okay. I thought maybe you had a really good reason.
I must first apologize because I know Lois and I and Patty here too have to leave shortly for a Rules Committee meeting. But I thought I'd just share a couple of things, not that they're anything earth-shattering, but just sort of set a foundation so that if you want to talk about this and use this as your base, that's fine. I mentioned Mac before. Going back, I don't remember an ordinance coming to us that had so many rough edges on it as this one does. Some of the ones that simply pass through the RTM with no looking, and there's been a lot of very close observation on this one, and it's not through. Do I think that it has some merit? Yeah. Do I think it's ready for our final approval? Oh, no, not even close. And yet there are a few things that I wonder about. One is the fee. You know, they talk about 10 cents, and they talk about that the businessman, it's going to cost them, and correct me if I'm wrong with numbers here, 14 cents. To begin with, why should we penalize the businessman for something that we are creating? If indeed it becomes a financial burden, and we're trying to get people with that 10-cent penalty to follow this regulation, should we raise that 10 cents to 20, 25, 50? I don't know where the price point is here, but I'm just pointing out to you that is 10 cents going to stir anyone? The only thing it may stir is some dissatisfaction from the business community, which, by the way, I was very surprised to hear. The head of the Chamber of Commerce wasn't real supportive of this particular ordinance. And how many times did we meet with the group and they said, oh, we have business support. Well, they may have business support, but it didn't show at that meeting. So I'm wondering if you know, I don't want to call him to be a liar, but I'm going to say, have we been told a tale? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. I'm just throwing it out at you. So I'm wondering, should we suggest that we increase the 10 cents? It also might encourage the business people, and that's the first one I have, of course, the fee. The second one is the imposition of that fee. If we're asking the business people to do this, and they're taking a 4-cent, penalty on this, to begin with, has it really been settled? Do they have the jurisdiction and power to do this? There was some talk about treating this as a tax, and do they really have that enforcement power to charge that? I don't know if that's been answered.
Well, no, it really hasn't, and that's a big blank that's in the ordinance.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, if they don't have the power, who has it? And if the businessmen have it, how are they getting it? You know, that hasn't been answered either. So fee is one. Enforcement's, I should say, the imposition of a fee is another one. And enforcement powers. With all due respect to Frank Kemp, who I think does a wonderful job, and I hope they catch that on Channel 79. But I asked him at one of our last meetings, who's going to enforce this? And I think he said it's going to be probably part of the blight ordinance person. Well, if you checked on a blight ordinance person, that person, you can't find around her because he's working 80 hours a week on blight. To burden him with additional responsibility of doing this becomes an impossible task when the selectmen said, we don't want to put any more money into this. Well, sure, I can turn around to people in government and say, what's your responsibility now? It's your responsibility now. And they go, we wash our hands of this. I don't think anybody can play Pontius Pilate here. I think we have to get some serious consideration where we're going to get that enforcement power that's going to be lasting. And we can't just put on the blight person, okay? And the other one I just wanted to mention too, and Mac and I have talked about this, and we brought this up to the powers to be. Does this ordinance deserve a sunset clause? What I mean by that is, should you put a date in this ordinance that say 3 years hence, we take a look at it again? Now some people are going to say, oh no, wait a minute, we're having a difficult time the first go round, do we need to look at it a second time? Well, if we're having that much difficulty now, how many times, and one word stood out, people came to the podium the other night at the public hearing, how many times do you hear about styrofoam?
Or straws.
Or straws, okay.
Yeah.
That's a
Now,
huge one.
that's
Yeah.
not included. Now,
Right.
should we in 2 years, 3 years, or X years, maybe if this is successful enough, and I don't know what other towns did, but should we look at it and say, yeah, it's a good idea, we've got the framework now, let's drop in plastic straws, let's drop in
Yeah.
styrofoam, let's
You
drop
don't-
in X.
You don't
whatever-
need a
whatever.
sunset clause for
Yeah,
that,
so-
though. You can
But
change an ordinance at any
You
time.
can, but what this does though, it forces us really to, instead of a group of people, it comes back to us
But
whether we like it or
also,
not.
what happens is that people ignore it, they forget it, and then the ordinance goes off the books.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think, I don't agree with the sunset clause. I think
I
if
just
you
think
write a
that-
good ordinance, it should be able to sustain it. If you want to change it, you can change it.
But I don't know, in history, I don't think it's gone as well that way. I think if you tap people on the shoulder and say, let's take a look at the skin, I think there's more recognition of that. But that's your
Well,
opinion, that's mine too.
Lois brought up the point about the different towns and their ordinances. I know Greenwich put that in theirs.
Yeah.
They have that in there.
We're
Yeah.
gonna look at it
Yeah,
again.
I can't remember if
Can I
it's
just
2
have
and 2
one last
years.
one, man?
Yeah.
And the other one too is that a lot of us have been hearing about what the state is looking at. I have no idea, and if anybody can inform me what the state's doing, please, I'd love to sit down with you. I don't want anyone to think, well, we don't have to do anything because the state's gonna do it. Well, and I'll say this too, and I said it to a couple of people before we started the meeting, as a retired public school teacher, I don't have a great deal of trust in the state of Connecticut. And therefore, in this case, I don't have a trust in them, and they're going to come up with a viable bill or ordinance that is going to be suitable for everyone in the state. Now, if they pass something that supersedes ours, and I think all of us recognize that, but don't let that the state's working say, well, we can wash our hands of this, and we can just sort of sit back and watch what the state's doing. I think they'd be foolish if we did that.
Well, I think you're right, because we're early in the season, and they're throwing out a lot of things in Hartford. They're talking about possibly regionalizing the school systems, all these things, and they're just throwing that stuff out there, and how long that would take to do a state ordinance, who knows?
Those are just some things, and I'm sure all of you have thought about those things before, but I just thought, since I believe really I just throw them out so you can deal with them or ignore them or do nothing.
No, those are all good things.
Two
Go
questions.
ahead, Mia.
One was
Sure.
just the sunset. I think that I am a supporter of the sunset clause because I feel like you maybe can potentially get people who are on the fence about having the ordinance passed in the first place. You could get them on board because they'll be like, well, in 3 years, we're going to revisit this anyway. It's not a forever thing, and we can, and as a way of kind of like, let's see how it works in the first couple of years. Additionally, I guess my question is to you, Mac, looking that we're going to move forward with this, is that moving forward with it as proposed, or that we amend it, or?
Well, we're kind of secondary on this.
Yeah.
We're not leading it, which is, I guess, is a good thing. But we're just supposed to offer our input.
Okay.
And my thought is that what we're doing tonight is we're just hashing all these things out. Jennifer's taking copious notes. But my point is that I'm going to take the minutes and then write up a synopsis, get it out to everybody, and then I thought we would then just give that to Public Works, because they're there, and then that's our job. So
this is our only chance.
No.
well, no, but it's
It'll come back to where we can.
but
Yeah,
I mean, right
definitely.
now I
I
think
mean,
this
to
is
make our comment, like.
Well, there's,
yeah. I mean, this is the time to do it. I
this is
think.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
well, there's lots of layers
Oh yeah. I
too.
mean, you can make
it'll-
comments at the full RTM
Although,
meeting.
yeah, I just mean our
yeah.
committee.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Well, this is unusual to have an opportunity to suggest what might go into an
Into it.
ordinance, as opposed to getting something that says, here it is, now vote on it, and then negate your yes or no or amending.
Mhm.
So this is a very different, well, as Gary was saying, it's a whole different process, so.
Well, I sent out to you the proposed ordinance. I mean, that's kind of the working ordinance, and that's, like you said, that has all these blanks in it, and that's what I think you'll be talking about tonight. The rules, I'm sure.
I don't,
So
No,
looking forward to
right.
it.
It just says, I mentioned before, it just says update on the BYO ordinance.
Mhm.
Patty, you heard anything more than that?
I think what's going on here, Frank will probably give us the same kind of feedback about what happened at the meeting last week.
Which is what
I'm sure he'll be able to answer much more specifics on what each town is doing.
Which may not,
He's so organized.
And then the town attorney has he goes through it and makes sure that
It's a long way
everything.
from putting it in
Yeah.
front of you to read for a final
Right,
copy.
right.
Yeah.
Right,
I
right.
think all of us agree on that.
And I know that the town attorney is looking closely at the legality of the 10-cent fee, or any fee at all.
I was
So-
reading Stanford, and then there was a discussion of tax versus fee.
Right.
And then if you had a fee, then were there any grounds to even put it in a document? So that'll be interesting to see what he comes up with.
You know, there's fees now. If you want to purchase a reusable bag at Stop and Shop, they charge you 10 cents. You know, they sell them right there.
That's what I was wondering, why can't a retailer just charge a fee? Do they
Well, they
need
can.
any-
The retailer
for
can,
anything?
but
Yeah.
we're telling the retailer they have
Is
to.
that right?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
a choice.
And that's
if they
different?
care enough to.
I think the idea, and that's getting back to trying to change behavior. If everybody's charging a fee, it's a level playing field. And I think what in the bigger picture, that if it was statewide, you know, you wouldn't. I can't imagine you'd go across town lines to save $1 on bags, but
Right.
you know, it's kind of the thinking.
I have a question about the paper. This is not a question that anybody can answer, but the idea of including paper bags in this ordinance as well, and the difference between recyclable bags and recycled bags. And I think it was the owner of the toy box stood up and said
Yeah.
his bags were.
I was confused about that too.
I would say that's a
He
big
talked
one
about
that they
recycled
really
and
need to make.
recyclable.
I don't know who chose
Is that-
12.
Yeah.
For the
Milk.
plastic, that was the
Like,
plastic.
that was
yeah.
plastic.
That was the,
That was
sorry,
plastic.
so the paper though was what? It had to be like a certain
It
amount
has
of
to be
recycled.
40%.
40%.
Stanford's
Right.
was 40.
You know,
And the expense of that was, I think, prohibitive for him, so I would like more clarity on that.
I was taken back by the Chamber of Commerce, and I really thought should look into what these small businesses are using and what is reasonable to put on them. I hate the idea that we're burdening small business owners. I think the group that is spearheading this got blessing from CVS and Stop and Shop and big retailers, and that's wonderful. But it's really the small dairy and business owner that is going to take a hit on this, and I really have a problem with that.
That's my concern with it, because there's two issues. There's the
thank you, sir.
plastic bag.
Thanks.
And Frank,
My apologies,
plastic
I
bag
thought for
ordinance, and then
7:30.
you listen to the business owners in town.
Well, we heard from the group, the BYOB, that they had gone to small businesses as well. So there is, some clarification that needs to be made about,
But I think we heard from Helen Ainson and the Toy Box
Kate
and
Brown.
Diane Brown that
right.
Which they
all
don't
of them
even
were-
use plastic. I go to all those, and they don't even use plastic.
well,
They
so
use
they use the-
completely recyclable,
Right.
reusable, like,
Yeah.
I
But
could
that-
throw it in
that-
the compost and it
Right,
wouldn't
we don't know
compost,
that
but, I mean,
BYOB doesn't even think that those are okay. We don't know. I mean, I think it's not clear.
That's where I think the whole bag.
Yeah, the whole paper
really-
bag thing.
It's the paper bag portion of this really, that yeah. is Because the nice shops are left- using paper bags. They're not that handing you left, up,
Yeah.
right, and I just wanted some clarity on Yeah, I that. thought that was a big one. Because, reasonable.
Could I
Yeah,
make a-
yeah, we want to be reasonable, and
More
it can't be.
more
it can't-
businesses to come
Right,
here.
we don't want-
So,
Yes.
so the,
Yes.
the
Yeah, it can't
idea
be
of
a-
including it is because it's bad for the,
Yeah,
They're
they're
not
not-
because we're using the paper.
because it's bad for the
Because
environment,
we'd
because
rather
we're
you
cutting
bring
down
the
trees,
reusable.
or
Oh, right,
what-
yeah.
what was the reasoning for including the paper bags?
Oh, in the charge, that's the charge, right? The charge is if you.
Yeah, there's a
that,
limit on
there-
what kind of paper
the weight,
bags can be used.
right? No, not the paper.
it says the
Really?
a business owner to provide
No,
a
the-
recycled paper bag in accordance with the requirements.
Right.
Do they
so-
charge you for it or not?
well, that's the big thing.
That's the charge.
The idea is that there's a mandatory
Just says
charge.
paper
They
bag.
can't give you the
Right.
bag, it has to be, you have to charge
Right.
for it.
And it has to comply with a certain 40% recyclable material, Three things, yeah. and it has to be able to be recycled. There's a couple things, yeah. And so,
I mean, I
It's
think to
all to-
answer your question, Olive, is that my understanding is that switching to paper isn't going to solve the problem because paper is not environmentally friendly because there's a huge cost in actually
Right.
growing the
Yeah.
trees and producing
Right, they
it and
wanna-
all that.
There's
other
no-
stuff. So the
wanna-
real idea
yeah.
is
There's
to
no
get us
magic.
away from using bags and use
At all.
our own
Right,
stuff.
any bag, it doesn't matter. Use your recyclable bags, yeah.
That's what, but paper's not an answer, it's just a substitute for plastic. That's
Right.
my understanding.
Just for some, you wanted to say something about the ordinance, and then you're on your way.
Okay.
This is Frank Kemp, by the way.
Last, Wednesday night, there was a public hearing. What are the numbers? 28 people spoke.
I went this 30.
5 of them had questions in opposition, and there were 23, I guess, then, but approximately. The next night, TGS and I met to consolidate the draft ordinances that we had at hand. A template we had received from BYOB a month or so ago. But we've done research on other communities, similar legislation, Stanford, Norwalk, Greenwich, and then other places in the country. We also added to the BYO template and that other research some standard closing paragraphs that are here, having to do with severability, the processing of if you receive a citation, and how you object to it, and then what the recourse of that is. So these are standard paragraphs that were added. Because we were involved 2 years ago in the development of the blight ordinance and found out a lot about writing ordinances at that time, the ending of this ordinance resembles blight a lot in terms of the pro forma cookie cutter paragraphs. What you have here is the current draft of what the legislation draft ordinance could look like. But on the front page here, you see that there are certain items that are left blank. If you were to go to page, bear with me, there's a section, like any ordinance, there's a section of definitions, and then there's a purpose, and then there's definitions, and then the implementation of it. If you look at page 3, down at, I'm sorry, page 4, there's a definition of reusable checkout bag. It's washable, it doesn't contain such and such, it's, you know, and then it says a plastic bag which is less than asterisk AA asterisk mil thick. Now, in the BYOB template, they say 12 mil thick. Here, there's a substitute here, this little placeholder, because we're not accepting exactly what they specified. What you have here is the language of an ordinance, but not the technical details. Back to the very first page, AA, BB, CD, EF, GH, IJ, there you will find placeholders throughout this model that are X'd out and need to be discussed as to what we're doing. For example, in the template, there's a provision that the charge for the paper bag will go up such as so many cents every 3 years. Well, you may not agree that that's valid. Take the whole sentence out. Or if you do agree, maybe it would go up 1 cent every 5 years. Or I think they proposed 3 cents, 5 cents every 3 years.
And see, we talked about no charge at all.
But
Yeah.
or just take the whole sentence out.
Right.
There's a certain objection to that sentence anyway, because if the board of selectmen or RTM wants to cause it after 3 years to rescind the ordinance, we can do that, or we can change that. Another difference is, a few years ago, we went through the whole stack of ordinances and cleaned out hard-coded fees and fines. We call them the buggy whip provisions. There was like a charge for missing a dog license or something, a nuisance, say $15. That was written a long time ago. So what we did was to pull out, I think there were probably about 15 different references through the code of ordinances, pulled them out and put them in an appendix table at the end, Appendix D, so that if the Board of Selectmen at budget time wants to change the fee for something, all they have to do is change it in the table, and that's effective. So as far as this ordinance is concerned, the fees or fines for violating the ordinance are off on the table. So the last page of this, it'd be interesting when this comes up to the floor of the RTM is voted on, and vote on this ordinance, then we all have to kind of vote on a change to Appendix D. I'm hoping that we can combine them in one vote. But, I mean, one without the other doesn't make much sense. But there are two actions that we have to put in the ordinance, and then we want to fiddle with the table in order to make it right. What Rules Committee is meeting in 5 minutes downstairs, and they'll have a discussion about what the next steps are. Because we've got this ordinance now, the TGSNA has completed their work. They have something on the table for us all to consider, the 3 committees. Public Work is in the lead, your committee, as well as TGSNA, or secondary committees. We have some work to do to not only fill in the blanks here from A to J, but the text as well. But this is a start. This is you have at the top, it's draft 1.3. We've had 1.1 and 1.2, which were a mess. We're at 1.3. Pretty happy with this. I know there are a couple of things we would need to tighten up in it, but it's a good jump off point.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thanks, Frank.
Other questions?
Do you have clarification about the compliance officer? I don't know if you have.
I'm sorry?
Do you have clarification about the compliance officer? It says it's designated by the Board of Selectmen, but I thought Mrs. Stevenson said that she wanted nothing to do with that.
Well, the other towns that have implemented this are larger than we are, and they have a Department of Environmental Services.
Right.
Or various, the understanding that we have is that we would undertake this effort without the expenditure of town funds, which means that the compliance officer would have to be a volunteer. We are all volunteers, but have to be appointed by the Board of Selectmen. And then you'll notice another title there is a hearing officer, which is standard.
So even though they're appointed by the Board of Selectmen, it's not somebody on the town staff?
Pardon me?
Yeah.
No,
I'm sorry. I
they're not
didn't- I
paid.
didn't
They're not,
hear you.
yeah,
They're
not
not
paid.
paid.
They're not
Okay.
paid.
Costing the
Yeah.
town any money.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Frank.
Just want to
All right.
clarify that.
Okay, we're good, thank you, Frank. Wait, I'm sorry, Frank. Oh.
Oh, my. One other note, so far we've received 37 letters to the editor, or in other words, the public response and letters, and they've all been posted up on the cloud. So anybody can read any of the letters that are there, we're up to date on that.
What's the temperature of them?
Excuse me?
How do they, for or against?
They're rough, and among the 37,
Mm-hmm.
there are about 10 that are opposed. And it's hard, I was thinking about posting the voters for and the letters against.
No.
It's hard to do.
No, because,
We
yeah.
want to make points of it. So the best thing we said is put them all up there, and when somebody wants to browse through them, can walk through them. If they're representing an organization, when you look at the index of them, it's the person's name. We don't have their phone number or email address.
Yeah, some of the letters are from outside interest, you know.
But
not-
if they're from an organization, we indicate what the organization is. Have fun.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Frank. Thank you.
If they're going to consider a sunset clause, would anyone consider not doing a fee for the bag? See how behaviors may change without the threat of 10 cents. And then after the 2 or 3 years pass and we revisit it, if we don't get the results that we hoped for, then implement a 10-cent.
Sure, I mean, you could do that. I don't know if you necessarily have to have a sunset provision, you just don't have a fee in there.
Right,
And
but
then- yeah.
I'm just saying,
Right, and then it could be
in the
revisited.
spirit of
Yeah.
compromise, because there are people who feel that it would be beneficial to,
But does that hurt the
Make-
small businesses more though? Because then they're not getting any money towards whatever bags that they.
Well,
Well,
they're not
I'm
getting,
still
but they're
hoping-
not getting money now. I mean,
True.
But they're getting, but there's a more of a cost.
But there's,
for the
yeah, some of them
paper
are
to
saying
plastic.
that the new bags would be more expensive
Yeah.
for them
Isn't
to
that just the
have.
cost of doing business?
Potentially.
See, I think you break it down, you're talking about results, what results mean, so the results, that you're trying to ban the plastic bag, the results also try to make sure small business prospers at their end, that's the big struggle.
right,
Yeah.
there's a balance.
So while they're programming to drive traffic to small businesses, maybe there's other programming to help offset that.
Wasn't a quote five, I forget who said it was $5,000 more it was gonna cost.
yeah.
To good Diane Brown.
Yeah.
No, it's just her, yeah.
Well, that's another point, you know, maybe you broaden the time period that you get rid of your inventory. I think, was it the store Helen?
Helen
And, you know, I think the comment was made that they had, I don't know how many years of bags in the garage or something like that.
Is there a way to reward early adopters?
Mhm.
You know, people who
Mm-hmm.
come forward and to change over, I don't know what the
Like a
reward
bonus
system
of
would be,
some
but
sort,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
I don't know where that would come from.
Yeah, where's the money?
Yeah.
From all of the
It's like,
other,
what's-
from the fines.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to all the individual establishments, so no one's going to want to give up their money to somebody else.
But is that I mean,
And that's really you know, I keep using the term the devil in the details. Everyone raises their hand and they want to ban plastic bags from the grocery store, but how do you do it? And do it in the right way that it doesn't really affect everybody as much.
I mean, could you say that stores that make above X a year have to be in plastic? And those are, I don't know, I don't know how you do that.
Or and then it's private information.
Right.
So where's the best, so Westport has done this, right?
Yeah, but they're not the best. They allow too fine a mill.
What's
Yeah.
their mill? Yeah, what's theirs?
It's
just
low.
Like, it's low, okay.
It's like 3.5 or something, I think. Is that what they say?
Yes, so the idea was they're still handing out plastic bags
Yeah.
that other people would suggest is,
That are inappropriate?
you know,
Yeah.
they don't break down.
But is there a best-in-class, even across the country somewhere, a best-in-class
Go
transition
to another
program?
country, probably.
Hmm?
So just go to another country, probably.
Right, yeah, right.
I don't think we're the best at anything.
But there's got to be some, this is how we transitioned and.
Well, I think most of the towns that they're within the last 6 months have put these on board, so at least in Lower Fairfield,
Mhm.
that, you know, they all have provisions of time to get rid of, so I don't even know if they're off of that yet. Greenwich and Stamford.
I don't think at least we haven't heard where there has been a lot of complaint from small businesses in those towns. We haven't heard it.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean it hasn't
It hasn't been
happened,
done, yeah.
but we haven't heard it. So, you know, maybe that's something that we should, you know, we should ask about.
Could ask,
I mean,
yeah.
that's part of the job the BYOB, is that wrong, BYD, whatever, is supposed to do, so.
Well, I know in Greenwich, they seem to move pretty quickly. I stop at a gas station before tennis, and often it's my time to buy the adult beverages for for the guys, and they quickly went to paper bags. You know, just it used to be a plastic bag, now it's a paper bag, but there's no charge. You know, not that it's a big deal, it'll be one bag, but they just give it out as a
Mhm.
cost of doing business.
I
But they're
think that-
still using the bag, and that's the point, is
Mhm.
we're trying to get to a point where
Right.
we're not using the bag.
Any bag of
Mhm.
any sort?
You know.
Yeah.
Well, that's the question, is that the Chamber of Commerce brought up the point of different merchants, you're using different types of bags. And I'm just wondering, is there a way that we can get more details, that we can perhaps expand what is acceptable, instead of saying 40% and recyclable and that's it? And maybe it's too strict.
I feel like
For the
it's-
paper.
I think it's too strict for the beginning of an ordinance. I just feel
Also,
like
there's a
it's
supply issue too, like aren't there very limited
Mhm.
No,
supply?
there were two sides on that. Somebody said there wasn't, and somebody
Yeah,
said there
someone
was.
There was, yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I also just don't think small businesses are gonna encourage you to like not walk out with their bag. Like Dairy and Sports
Oh,
Shop,
'cause it's advertised.
never
It's
gonna
advertised,
try.
right.
They
Yeah.
love handing out their bag. Like
Right.
everyone reuses them,
Right.
right?
Sure.
Like,
It's marketing.
Yeah.
it's marketing.
Yeah.
They're just not gonna be like, oh, did you bring your reusable
Can we
bag?
have-
And I
if
put
we-
your new shirt in? Okay,
Right.
great. Like they're just not gonna encourage that.
If we
And
can-
that's fine. If they don't want, like, by all means, it's a business. It's
It's
about
a
profit.
choice, yeah.
Like it's their choice. I get it.
Well, Palmer's has those wonderful recyclable bags that say Palmer's on it.
But that's a
Yeah.
grocery store.
Yeah.
I
No,
know.
but I'm just
right.
saying, but
like
but Dairy and Sports Shop is
they
huge.
could. You're right. They could make a really good looking.
And their
I love
paper,
reusable
I have no
bags,
idea
so-
if their paper bag meets the standards at all.
Yeah, I don't.
It's pretty thick.
It
It's
is.
just really shiny.
And it
So
has
that's
a-
why
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
so
yeah.
shiny. It is. It
Shiny.
doesn't recompostable.
Yeah, good.
It's just-
It sounds like we're in agreement that recycled paper bags, albeit still not great for the environment, are better than the plastic bags.
Right.
And so we're saying the ordinance, if I'm correct, is we're trying to ban all plastic bags.
Yes.
Yeah?
Over a certain mill.
No, you could have, like Stop and Shop has, I think some businesses have plastic bags that are okay. They're over 12 mil or 12 mil. I
Okay.
mean, Stop and Shop has a 10-cent bag right now that says you can use
Okay,
it
but-
125
yeah.
times. I don't know if that meets their standards, but.
So why can't, and, you know, in order to protect the small businesses, why can't we just have the charge be more for the paper bag, like 20 cents? I mean, I don't.
I think it's that
Do you- is
the
anyone-
bags that they currently use,
Yeah.
that they have designed and they
Yeah.
are using, do not meet these standards.
And they have a lot of inventory.
And they
of those.
have inventory, it
Yeah.
is part of their marketing, it is their identity, and we are saying, within 6 months, you can't use that anymore.
I don't think there's been a time frame actually
Well,
decided on.
there is some.
But there is gonna be a
Yeah.
timeframe.
Definitely
Yeah.
do something out there.
You do a
just be
phase in.
generous with
You do a
that.
phase
But
in, yeah.
Yeah, phase it, but then, and then just make people, I mean,
But I keep thinking of Helen Ainsley, but I think their comment was they have like a 2-year supply or something. And they spent thousands of dollars on these. They probably bought them in bulk because they got a better price.
but then you'll, down the road, if you make the charge for a bag 20 cents or something that's above cost, they'll make that money back.
And let's be honest,
you know,
the
down
profit
road.
margin they're making is not
Yeah.
slim. As opposed to Diane Brown, who's selling coffee.
Yeah.
And some, I mean, more than that, but come on.
Yeah.
It's running a business. I mean, I run a small business. It's part of managing a business.
We still don't know if it's really hurt small businesses in other towns. I think that would
They're
be.
just gonna raise their prices on something else, which they should. Right?
Well, that's what they said, they would pass on the cost.
Yeah, cool. We're gonna notice it like not at all.
Right. That's 20 cents.
Really, this is really
for, like,
rounding.
whatever you're buying is not going to be that
And I'd say to
significant.
Susan, let's have some other programming that can really help drive traffic, which we should be doing anyway, but.
What I'm suggesting is that we need more information. We
Oh, yeah,
don't
I
know.
agree.
We don't know what what the requirements are. We don't know what is considered reasonable.
I think that's the hard part, is that, well, all of us, I mean, I have no real knowledge about plastics, and I think it's hard for me to make a judgment call on what an appropriate mill is when I really have no idea.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
the
that
other
is
thing
the
is-
See it in
best
front of you,
practice.
yeah.
Right.
The other thing that Laura and I were talking on the way over is that, we're public health and safety, and we're trying to grapple at what are the public health and safety aspects of this, and there really aren't. So we're just trying to offer our input.
Right.
And like you say, it's hard.
I think there are.
Yeah, I think there are too.
I mean, when we talk about pulling plastic bags out of Gorham's
No,
Pond.
that's what I-
no. What he
No.
means is, there's no issue about public health and safety. We are all in agreement.
Oh.
Plastic is bad, so
Yeah.
then,
Oh,
yeah.
so then we don't need to sit here any longer. We can just get up and leave because
Yeah.
it's public health and safety.
Versus-
Absolutely,
yeah.
ban that,
Versus
ban
grappling with-
styrofoam, ban everything that we
Right,
make because, but we still live in a small town.
Yeah.
And we're
Wanting to
one of
consider
the
the
few
lunch.
groups that have the ability to sit here and try to mold what is going to happen with this ordinance.
Well, I guess we pass on our concerns to the people who are responsible for the ordinance that.
Oh, exactly,
Yeah.
that's what we're doing,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Do you have other major concerns?
No, probably just the business end.
Right.
And I see here, this is section
It was
3.
kind of shocking when they came in, the Chamber of Commerce came in lukewarm, at best.
Well, protecting their.
Well, I wonder how the
their
other
members.
towns' Chamber of Commerce did. I mean, they
Right.
had
But I-
way more businesses to deal with.
Well-
Yeah, well,
So
I
talk to
believe
Greenwich,
that-
talk to Westport's Chamber of Commerce,
It might
right?
well
Like,
be that the town,
How do they handle
small
it?
business was in favor of this. I didn't really get that at the meeting.
Well, we had.
No, I agree with you.
We had, like, what, 3 small
Three small
businesses?
businesses.
So
Yeah,
it's
so we
Diane
can't,
and
it's
who
hard
else?
to know.
Toy Box.
Oh, I didn't hear him,
Yeah.
okay.
He was
What did
No,
he
but-
say?
one of the last.
What did he say?
His paper bag, like that white paper bag that
Yeah,
he uses.
is good?
No, it
It's
does not
not,
meet
Mhm.
whatever.
Thin.
But Brian's
No,
point is
but-
well taken.
Recyclable.
No, he
It's
said it was
recyclable.
recyclable, it was,
Yeah.
it was,
And he puts a sticker on it.
Yeah, but Brian's point is well taken, is that when we had our own meeting with BYO, and they cited, 95% of the retailers are in favor of this, and the chamber's behind it, and I think we got that.
Shifted a little.
Was it Joe Warren too?
Yeah,
He's
Joe
a
Warren.
small business.
Oh, that's right, I heard Joe, yeah.
well, he said he didn't care if it passed or not. That it wasn't, to him, it wasn't
The
hitting the
store.
right, most
Well,
important
and
thing.
he's-
Santa Claus.
And his
Yeah,
comments
yeah,
were
yeah.
more, and I get it, is that, the plastic bags are just a drop in the bucket. I mean,
Yeah,
there
that
are
was
other,
what he
there
said,
are other
right?
things
I
that are,
couldn't read
and you
it.
look at the hierarchy, cigarette butts are the worst. They're way up there.
Really?
And, that's the number one
Well, and-
littered item in the world.
I don't see
Yeah.
any around
Yeah.
here.
And I saw him
Well,
the
you
other
don't
day.
even notice them
Yeah.
hardly.
And he was, I saw him the other day, and he was really on, again, that why isn't Bridgeport recycling these? So.
But then the one guy talked about it turns into energy, which I kind of found that.
That was
It
interesting.
was interesting. I was like,
Yeah.
is this true? Or
But
did you
also-
just
Oh,
make this
oh,
up?
absolutely. No, what they do is they burn the garbage to create heat,
Okay.
which turns turbines and creates the electricity. I did a little
I
bit of
don't know.
looking
Use
into,
that.
yeah. So-
Kind of reusing it, right?
But
No?
the problem is that across the country, they're competing against natural gas to do that same process. And
Got
natural
it.
gas is so cheap right now that it's hard for them, when they sell their electricity, to make money at it. So they're
Okay.
struggling.
Got it.
I also have an issue with them being burned in Bridgeport, and that population's already underserved in so many ways, and then they're gonna be the first-hand smellers of that. I mean,
Right.
if we were gonna burn them here, we'd have such an issue, right?
right, yeah.
So I don't think we should be burning them
Good
anyway.
point.
No, and that's,
And the toxins that
Yeah.
are released.
Yeah, they'll-
And then, of course,
That
Bridgeport's
can't
smelling them,
come,
right?
well, that's when I was reading
So-
about it, one faction says, oh, it's clean, it's, they,
Got it,
they
right.
clean all the scrubbers and everything, and then the other factions were breathing all this stuff.
Can I ask a question, guys,
Sure.
about section 3, page 5, and maybe this is what you were saying before? No business establishment shall provide or sell a plastic or paper bag.
Right.
So this
Right.
was that
That's-
limiting, that's what you're talking about. Yeah,
Right.
that's extremely limiting.
But then it says it can provide customers with a recycled paper checkout bag. But are you selling that bag? Are you giving that bag?
In the next section, hun?
Yeah, 4.1. I don't understand the difference.
There's, it's definitions earlier, I think, on page 2, where it says checkout bag, and then also there's a paper checkout bag and plastic checkout bag.
Okay.
Under definitions.
Paper checkout bag, it does not mean it's,
It's still not very
it's not very
clear.
No, it's
But
not
that
clear
is
at
where the
all.
definition.
Yeah, right. So the recycled paper bag is the one that's 40%.
Yes, 211, yeah,
211?
2.11 is the.
That's the goal, to move to that.
Mhm.
Yeah? So that's going to be confusing, that 2.8, people are going to say, why can't we have a paper checkout bag? I guess it doesn't meet the requirements, right? Yeah. It doesn't meet or exceed, okay. So that's like toy box bag.
Right. There's just a lot of clarification that needs to happen.
Yeah.
And then some really good public communication. Right.
So was anyone around 6 years ago when this came?
Yeah.
I remember it, yeah.
And how ugly, I mean, was it just like
Well,
shot down? Was it not well
Every,
thought out? Was
every
it-
committee that, like ours, that, we talked about it and
Yeah.
everything, but the majority was against it, so. and-
what
and the-
reason?
and-
Yeah,
Well,
what
the
reason?
biggest one was that you, at that point in time, you could recycle plastic bags. You just put them in your blue hopper. And so the thinking was, what's the big deal? And that's changed now. That's a big change. You can't do that anymore. So what do you do with plastic bags? In most cases, they're just getting put in your general garbage and being thrown away.
Do you think we knew then that they lasted for hundreds of years? I don't think we knew that then.
Really?
I wasn't on
6
the
years
art.
ago?
I don't know if we
Plastic
knew.
bags were around for, I feel like.
Probably.
Was it that?
It was more, I think, also that
Like,
no
I
one
feel
else
like I've
really
known
had
that
done
my whole
it. I don't know, had Westport passed theirs at that time?
I don't think so.
Westport
I think
passed
it
theirs
was,
like
it was
8
like,
years
we
ago.
would
Really?
have been
8
early
years ago?
But it's
adopters.
been-
Oh, wow.
But it's not,
It's not very
See, that's my
strict.
It's not
concern,
as
that we're gonna
strict.
end up
It's not
having
very
this like
strict.
Mhm.
willy-nilly one, and we forget about it. It's like, oh, we did our job. We have an
Mhm.
ordinance,
Can't-
and then no one's ever gonna wanna bring it up again, because it's like,
No,
oh, that took
no,
us so
right.
long to get that one passed. And it
Just
barely
think about all the
passed, and
bags
then
you
it
get
just.
when you're shopping on that Westport
Yeah.
app. They're all different. They're all, like, there's not.
And there was,
They're not consistent.
talking about that night,
too.
when the full
brands.
RTM, there were some pretty powerful speeches. I remember Jim Cameron, that passionately talking against it, that, he was supportive of, but he was going to vote against it because it was just, he kept saying it's just a feel good. He used to talk about
That,
feel.
yeah, and I honestly, yeah.
Yeah, it makes everybody feel good, but it's
Feel
not
like
going to
they
do
did something
anything.
right.
and we don't want that.
No, but
And
I think,
I'm not
I-
even suggesting
Yeah.
that
Well,
with
Joe
the
Joe
paper.
Warren kind of mentioned that the other night.
Right.
That
Yeah.
was kind of his tone also.
but if we want to change behaviors, you have to start somewhere.
Well,
Oh,
that's
agreed.
We do, but there
Yeah.
has to be teeth in it. If there's
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
teeth,
Yes.
and again, like,
Yeah.
and I was talking to my mom about this after that night, and she's uber eco-friendly, whatever. And like, so I'm just gonna, for milk, Whole Foods, the glass ones. So when I first moved here, and after I had my first kid, I started drinking that milk. It's really good. And I had no idea that you could return the bottles. Like, no clue. Never looked at my receipt, never saw that there was a $2 charge, $2 for those bottles.
Wow.
I was recycling them for like a year.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's a lot of milk.
A lot of milk, yeah. And then I saw
Tasted
someone
good.
returning them, and I was like, oh my God, that's great. I can return them. This is so much better. They won't have to remake them. Like, again, not thinking that like I'm going to get money for it.
Where do you
10
return them?
cents I wouldn't even not notice on
Right.
my bill if there was a 10-cent fee for a bag that I was being charged. Like
20 cent there would you would.
yeah. So I know I'm the extreme that I just don't pay attention to my receipts
Wow.
clearly.
No, but we had that discussion too.
So that's where I'm like, is 10 cent? Like I don't No, I know he did.
Yeah, it's like when you go to Whole Foods and they deduct the 10 cents when you bring.
I
your
don't
bag.
notice that either. I'm just happy that I don't have
The
more
cashier
paper
could totally
bags.
forget to do that, and I would have no idea.
I would have no
Yeah.
idea. I'm not like, where's my 10 cents?
Yeah.
Need my 10 cent? Like,
Right.
so
Well, I
that's
know,
just where there's
you know,
no teeth. I
Major
just-
corporations,
Yeah.
Procter & Gamble has a test right now where they're trying to, you know, you pay for it, you buy a container with Tide in it, and then you actually send it back to them, and then, you know, they refill
Yeah.
it. But the cost, you can imagine the cost of
Shipping,
it, the weight.
ship the weight, yeah. Like,
So I mean, they're
and the
they're
hassle,
trying
yeah.
things in test markets
Which
and
is
stuff, but
fantastic,
it's tough. We're so used to those big plastic bottles.
Yeah, So I just think that not only should it not be a feel good and not be, but like, people are going to actually notice it and want to change the behavior and know why we're asking
Right.
them to
The
change the
education
behavior.
part of
The
this is
education
really
part
big.
of it.
The bigger
Should be
picture.
really
Bigger
big.
picture,
Yeah.
yeah, not just, oh, this is so annoying, I have to bring my bag, or, oh, I don't know, so.
And to be mindful, Stop and Shop is a gigantic organization. They can stomach it.
Yeah.
And
And
mind
they've
you,
said
Oh,
they
they
would.
already
They
said
would.
they
They're
would.
prepared to.
And to be
Yeah.
honest, they've got to be looking at, they almost need to be doing this in general.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
in looking at through that lens, looking through Whole Foods has nothing to change, obviously, right? They're
No,
all
well,
nipped
we
and
don't know their
tucked.
bags are in compliance.
Oh my gosh, you're right, I wonder.
Well,
We don't know that yet?
No, I
we
don't think so.
we don't have Kroger's in this area, but they're big in the Midwest
Yeah,
and
I
the
know
South,
Kroger,
and they're converting. They're, I think
Yeah.
it's 2 or 3 years
They're the
out.
number
They-
one
they've
wonder
given
of
a-
food retailer in the country.
They've given a hard number, I think it's 2022, that they'll do away with plastic bags.
So
Yes.
it doesn't seem like it was the large retailers that anyone was
tiny ones.
concerned about.
No.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mia?
No, I was just
Yeah.
going to say, they've done it in other towns, the bigger ones, so that
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
adapting.
My
to
parents
something
live
that's
in
already
Santa
there.
Fe, New Mexico, and you have to bring a bag. If you don't have a bag, you're
You
carrying it
just-
out in your
yeah.
arms, so.
You know, like
That's why
Costco.
I really don't
At their
understand
grocery
why,
store?
why we
Or
don't
everywhere.
just have a higher fee. Like, why don't we make a bag cost 25 cents? I mean, people will eventually bring their own bags. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
Well, that's what the BYO people
Yeah.
suggested. You know, you're making a hard cost. If someone's got 20 bags that they need, it's a few dollars. The next time they'll remember.
I remember that woman who stood up and said 29 years ago
Unbelievable.
she bought 10 bags, or she bought
Oh, I
10
like
bags
those
and
bags.
she still
Those were
has.
cute,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it would be great if
Looks
they
like
would
it's in
sell them
great
again.
shape.
It did, yeah.
Great shape.
Well, because they're washables.
Yeah.
A lot of the
Those are better than the
recyclable
Whole
bags
Foods,
you get
yeah.
are not
They're great,
washable.
yeah. Yeah.
So you're going to go back with a list of clarifications that we'd like?
Yeah,
or-
you know, like I said, you know, the things, the
Yeah.
points that Jennifer has taken, you know, and if there's anything glaring that I think is wrong, I'll reach out to you, but I'll put something together. And why don't I just email it to everybody, you know, just so for assuming everyone says it's accurate, and then I'll forward it to Monica at Public Works, and then we'll just take it from there. Because
Okay.
I think it's really, at this point, that's all we can do. You know, now what may happen is we may get more of a clarification in a month on this, and then we can revisit a little bit.
So you're thinking a sense of the committee and then the pros and the cons we brought up?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
you know. So, so that really was it. I have in here that we're going to vote on the points, but I think right now, why don't we just put pen to paper and get it first. So next would be any announcements. Anything fun?
Remember, we're on TV.
Right, right.
I was
No.
going to, yeah.
No. But this, you know, none of these things are easy, and it's really, you know, I commend all of you and certainly the other groups. I mean, the main thing is I think we were trying to move this forward, but we certainly don't want to go too fast.
Right.
So,
I think
Yeah, be mindful.
I worked with Frank on the blight ordinance,
Mhm.
and we had like draft number 7, 8. You know, I mean, it
Yeah.
really does take a lot of tweaking.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when it comes down to the real small minutia, then you have to make a choice, and either it passes with it or it doesn't.
Mhm. Okay. Well, motion to adjourn?
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Thanks,
Okay,
Matt.
no, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank